Hello everybody, and welcome to another vBrownBag Meet the Expert episode. We're here today at the New York UserCon, and I have the great privilege of having Kyle Ruddy with me. Kyle, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So I am a senior technical marketing engineer for VMware. However, outside of that, I'm also heavily involved in things like the vBrownBag podcast. I'm a host there, serial content creator, and presenter, and pretty much a big-time community advocate as well.
That's pretty cool. So one of the things I love doing in this interview series is I ask people how did they start in IT. So tell us your story. Don't be skimpy on the details.
Yeah, so starting in IT, so originally not many people know, but I have a background in pharmacy, and so that's actually what my undergraduate degree was going to be in. And I got to the point where I was making a lot of side money doing computer repairs, and I happened to be at a university that had a really good IT degree as well. And so I started taking some IT classes on the side, and they started getting more and more interesting, and the pharmacy courses started getting less and less interesting, and I made the move and found a nice internship and kind of worked my way up.
Oh, tell me more, because especially how did you start getting IT work out of the nothing? I mean, if you're like the typical person, you just use the internet and stuff, and where did someone say, hey, fix my computer?
So I was involved in a car club through Purdue, and that was pretty much one of those things of people were like, hey, my laptop doesn't work, and I'm like, well,
it's because of this.
I can do some stuff, so let me see. And it got to the point where then I was the go-to guy for the car club to get their stuff fixed or what have you, and that's kind of where it has spiraled out of control from there.
Cool. Okay, so you decided to take more classes there.
Mm-hmm.
How did you start actually working in IT? What was your first job? What did you find out that you liked more than something else? Because IT is humongous.
Oh, absolutely. There's many areas that you can focus on, and for me, it was a kind of a luck thing where I lucked out. I got an internship with the university, and so they gave me the ability to start on help desk. And from that point, they were pretty much like, hey, you're a good worker. What else do you want to get into? So I got into Active Directory administration, to handle the desktops. And then it kind of just continued from there. I never really felt the need, because I felt such at home for these tasks and for this work that I never really felt the need to explore too much outside of that.
Okay. How, for me, I've known you for maybe a year or more, particularly through vBrownBag. I find that you are one of the most even-keeled persons I've met. Even though you're traveling all the time, you're really busy, you're doing blog posts, you're so funny, you're so calm. Tell me about, is that a thing that has always been there? Do you think that's something that's helped you over the long term of your career?
Absolutely.
Because you started help desk, you have to be like a very political person.
Yeah. You have to be very nice. You have to, be very go with the flow. You have to, just be understanding, and you have to remember pretty much, where you came from. That no matter where you're at now, remember the people who help mentor you and be that kind of mentor. Nick had a vBrownBag session earlier on the V community, and that was very. It's a very good thing to see and kind of remember and kind of live back through. So that was very cool. But yeah, this is something that's pretty much always been there, and something that I really try and hold on to, because that's
everybody. There's always someone starting.
Correct.
Right? Yep. There's always someone better than you. So that's pretty cool. Tell me how you started in vBrownBag.
So a guy by the name of Jonathan Frappier pretty much was like, hey, you should do this. I was like, oh, okay. And
how do you meet Jonathan? Did you guys met at a UserCon or?
Through VMworld, actually. I actually happened to be kind of wandering around the vBrownBag stage and told him that I was interested in doing some things, and that was like the lit a fire under him.
The moment you tell someone you want to do something, it's like, yes.
Especially when you tell Frapp that, because all of a sudden you're voluntold for all the things, and that's kind of where it went from there.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So tell me about, I think most people know that you are like synonymous to PowerCLI, right? But tell me a little about PowerCLI, how you got started with PowerCLI before you actually worked for PowerCLI.
So I'm lazy, and the bigger and bigger the environment that I was attached to and had to manage, I got tired of having to sit there and click and click and click and do all these things, especially when it was repetitious. That's no fun. That's my workload piles up because I'm over here doing these things instead of doing all of this other stuff, and I started to want to automate that. And at the time it was, okay, so do I do VRO? Do I do, or technically at that point in time it was vCenter Orchestrator, or do you go down the path of PowerShell and PowerCLI? And for me personally, that was one of those areas where PowerShell was so versatile. You can apply that in many other areas of your career, where you can do Windows management, you can do Active Directory, Exchange, so on and so forth. I'm like, this I would be crazy to not learn this. And then at that point I was able to automate all of these things, all of the pieces of my job, and even hand those off to other people who are on my team, that now they're automating their tasks, and now they're being able to focus on more interesting things. And it was very powerful. So you said,
I gotta, PowerShell is the future. This can be applied to a lot of different jobs out there.
Yep.
I'm just gonna get at it. How do you get good at it? Because a lot of people just start, and it's like literally installing something. Sometimes it's a problem, and about this. And, how do you actually get so good that VMware will say, "Hey, we want you in their team"?
That's where the community gets involved. When you're out there, you're creating all of these scripts, or you're creating all these automation workflows. Start sharing them. Start blogging about them. Start talking about them. Start getting involved, and that's how you really catch the eye of somebody that's internal at VMware and go, he might be a good addition here.
Okay. So you said practice, and when I ask you how do you get good at it, I gather you didn't go to school for programming courses, or do you actually take any of the programming courses?
I took some JavaScript and some Java, and what was it, C#.
So what most people get, not really a specialized thing. And you said practice. Now tell me more about that, because obviously for me a lot of the things has been Google what I'm trying to solve. Somebody else has it. Let me figure out what I need to modify. Profit, right?
Well, and that's absolutely the way to do it, because I mean that's how when you can start reading through the code and understanding what it's doing, that's when you can start enabling yourself to then start creating your own. Because for the longest time, the hardest thing for me was to start some kind of scripting resource. Doing just like, okay, here is A. Like that was the hardest thing in the world for me, whereas I could take anybody else's script who already had that started, and I could modify it to do whatever I needed in my environment. So that was just kind of one of those things where you start going down the path, you start finding things that you want to do, you start finding test areas or things like the hands-on labs that you can then run that in an environment that's safe. It's not going to mess up your production, or it's not going to like bring down your home lab, things of that nature. So yeah. And shout outs to any mentors that helped you get better at understanding code and certainly. So Alan Renouf was a huge one. I mean, basically the godfather of PowerCLI. He was a very big one, very influential. Luke Deakins is another really big one as well. Some of the local folks from when I was living in Indy, Brian Wookner and Matt Bourne, were two really good individuals that were always there and always quite helpful. So
that's pretty cool.
Big thanks and shout out to those guys.
Yeah. So tell me about your current role, and I want to shift from PowerCLI a bit. Tell me about what excites you now. Like what gets your juices flowing now? What are you trying to learn?
Anything new. Anything that seeing somebody doing something that they've never done before, or seeing something that I've never seen done before. Those are things that, like when you see that light bulb go off in either my own head or somebody else's head, that's like the most important thing or the most invigorating thing for me that makes it exciting. So, any particular thing? I mean, you said anything new, but examples. Are you messing out with Ansible? Are you doing stuff with VRA? Tell me a little bit more about what you're currently thinking and trying to get better at. Right now, what I'm trying to get better at is consuming RESTful APIs. Okay. So that's also one of the areas that I focus on with VMware, because vSphere and vCenter have released new RESTful APIs. It's even back to 6.0, but we're expanding them in 6.5 and going forward. So making those easier to use and doing that kind of enablement for our users is really important. And I want to make sure that I'm pretty much on the forefront of not just being able to understand and consume them, but also being able to explain that out to the other folks who will actually be using them and consuming them for their production environments.
It is, for me, I have not ever interfaced with an API. And I've seen that in vBrownBag we started a whole API series. And I've been hearing for years, especially the network guys, and how they are switching over to that model. So for me, one of the things that is really important when I look at the blogs of VMware.com is examples. Show me how this is being used. I know you're probably one of the most prolific authors on the PowerCLI and such topics. So really appreciate all you do.
Absolutely.
Tampa. Were you personally hurt with the latest hurricanes?
No, thankfully not. We had a little bit of damage, but lost a fence panel and lost some soffit. But I consider myself and my family extremely lucky to have exited that quite unscathed.
Okay. Well, good things happen to good people, and sometimes we don't understand what God does. But I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else you want to put out in the community? Because this is going in our channel, so it's your channel as well.
Absolutely. So a couple of the big things that I'm currently focused on, one of the things that you touched on is sharing examples and sharing scripts and things of that nature. So there is a PowerCLI example scripts repository that is out there. It's on the VMware GitHub page, and that is open and available for anybody to contribute back to. There are also our open sourced SDKs for consuming the RESTful APIs. Those are out there, always looking for examples or ideas to go along with those. And then there's also the VMware code samples that are out there as well, which is code.vmware.com. And that's another really good place to not only request some examples, but also submit your own.
Okay.
So, by submitting your own examples, you're just making everybody else better, because there's a good chance if you're doing it, somebody else is doing that too.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kyle, for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course.